ounce of this, every drop, every taste, on the tip of my tongue, bend my nail, bite my thumb, evidence won't clear my name, baby, in your presence will be so forever, until the moment when I press my eyes shut. Now I'm ready. What else is going on in the water? Yeah, when we hold each other, nothing else can let us down. The only answer is what we've always wanted for. I'll do anything. I'm not asking this is mine through the perfect strings. 10,000 days on the line. Days won't clear our names. Oh, baby, it's our last kiss. Will last forever. That's the moment when I rest my eyes shut. Now I'm ready.
It's over! Top shelf where Mama hides the cookies! Here come the Buffalo Sabres!
Welcome, everybody, to episode 152 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, West New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at 8 different Western New York locations. Make sure you go get to Fatty Beer on one of Western New York's only kid and dog-friendly bars, open 7 days a week from 11:30 a.m. till 10:30 p.m. and later. And of course, they have live music, entertainment, and trivia at all 8 locations. And let's not forget Buffalo Apparel, one of the greatest spots you can get all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs, whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies. They literally have it all at Buffalo. Make sure you go check out their Buffalo Masters shirts. They're available once again on their website, buffalogo.com, at Buffalo Co. on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, grab some of our merch, the 39 Goated snapback hat, the RJ snapback hat, which is available in 2 different colors, red and black and blue and gold. And of course, the GOAT shirts and hoodies. And hopefully soon, some stuff with our own logo for the show on it. We'll see. That's I'm pretty sure that's in the works with Buffalo. Go check them out. Hurls, fashionably late. We both are, but yeah, West Coast trip did not go as planned. It looks like we're staring 13 years of the drought right in the face, and I think that's going to be like a main topic in this episode is the drought. And we're inching closer to that 17 years that that the Bills had before they finally broke theirs. I'm just going to open it up with this question to you. What's been more intolerable to go through? The Bills drought for 17 years or the current drought the Sabres are in?
It's tough because they're so different. I think we've talked about it. The Bills were kind of plagued by the fact that they were just really, really mediocre most of those years. It was a lot of 6-10 and 7-9, and they weren't able to get that quarterback to get them over to the top. But the defense was always pretty good, and they were able to compete to get to the point where they would get that mid-round pick but not be quite good enough to make the playoffs. So that was the purgatory the Bills were in. And I think looking at it in the lens of the Bills, it's always different, right, too, because it's only 16 games. The season's much shorter. You treat each game differently. So I think looking at it from a Bills plus Sabres perspective is a little bit different. I think it was probably a little bit more painful for more people, given the scope of the Bills and their relevance in national and international culture. But for true diehard Sabres fans, also if you consider yourself a diehard Bills fan, I would say that the Sabres drought is probably a little bit more painful, and it's because they've been so bad for so long. And I guess recently, having a little bit of hope, coming so close and having so much talent and promise just kind of twists that knife a little bit. So, yeah, as someone who is both a diehard Bills and Sabres fan, born and raised in Buffalo my entire life, both of my parents are as well, and hearing their stories about both teams, I would say this one hurts a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a solid question to ask too, because to your point, like how often were the Bills like on that graphic on TV during games in the hunt? They're in the hunt. You know, like you're holding on to your hopes until like, you know, week 16 might come down to week 17. It did once or twice actually, you know, where we finally were eliminated from playoff contention. That heartbreaking Pittsburgh game to be the most specific. But with the Sabres up until last season, they haven't been close. They have not been close. And one of those seasons we intentionally lost for an entire year. So I don't know, man. I definitely have to agree with you. I think that the Sabres drought has been worse because we've just never been close.
Aside from last year.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Besides from last year,
Yeah.
up until this, like 11 years straight of just not even being close. And one year in particular where, yeah, we were losing on purpose.
Yeah, it definitely makes it harder. And the number one overall picks added to the equation, of course, make it a little bit more difficult. 2 number one overall picks, 2 number 2 overall picks who are now obviously both gone in Eichel and Reinhart, and of course succeeding wildly elsewhere. Sam Reinhart just scored his 51st goal of the season about 10 minutes ago. Jack Eichel just won a Stanley Cup. And then you factor in the Ryan O'Reilly of the equation, him leaving and then winning a Stanley Cup and a Conn Smythe himself. A lot of players going on to have success elsewhere. Hypothetically, let's say Casey Middlestad or Kyle Okposo win a cup with the Panthers of the Avalanche this season. It's been tough to see guys that we've rooted for and invested time and energy into go elsewhere and succeed. So yeah, it does make it painful. And as we've talked about many times, the organizational ineptitude for the most part does make it hurt a little bit more. I think the Bills had at least some semblance. I mean, there was a lot of in and out of coaches and GMs throughout those years, and obviously quarterbacks as well, but you never quite got as frustrated with the overarching organization as a lot of Sabres fans are with the Pegula resume right now. So yeah, it's been really tough. I don't want to completely give up quite yet because you never know what's going to happen at the end of an NHL season. You saw what happened with the Sabres last year. They went on a 9-2-1 run. Levi went nuclear in the final stretch there for the Sabres, and they've got a 5-game homestand coming up. Let's say they haven't won more than 3 games in a row all year, but let's say they get hot and they win 4 or 5 or 5 of 5 at home here. It's not out of the question. Obviously, it's only 1.9% chance, but yeah, it's of course disappointing in the realm of expectations to begin the year.
Yeah, and again, I'm not just giving hope. I know like the headline of this episode has been like the drought or the drought continues. Been like, you know, it would take legitimately angels in the outfield level miracle right now for this team to inch their way into the playoffs, especially with the way the Capitals specifically, the most unsensible team in the I can't make any sense of the way they're playing right now. They sold at the deadline, yet they're still potentially a playoff team. I don't know, man. For me, it's just the pain we went through as a fan base, right? Like the pain we went through as a fan base, not even just the drought year, but just everything. Seeing O'Reilly leave, go like that. I remember that draft day when we traded for Ryan O'Reilly, and the offseason before, like leading into that, where we made that deal, Tyler Myers, Armia, and so on to Winnipeg for Evander Kane, and There was one other part of that deal too, or no, never mind. Jamie McGinn was part of the O'Reilly deal. Right, I lied. I don't think we got anything else in return. I think it was just for Evander Kane straight up. But like gaining that bona fide goal scoring winger for Jack the second he came in after intentionally losing him for an entire season. You know, you get O'Reilly, you know, the bridge to Eichel being the 1C. You find him in O'Reilly, a guy who's already won a cup. Like he already knows what it takes. Actually, did he win a? No, did he win a? No, he didn't win a cup. Sorry,
yeah, they haven't yet.
I'm thinking of when we got. I'm sorry, no, but still, playoff success. He's been to the playoffs. He's been around a pedigree of winning already, and he's already comes in as kind of looked upon as a leader. You know, you get that guy, and just you start building. Obviously, you know, you kind of laugh at it when you say it out loud, but there was a lot of promise around guys like Rasmus Ristolainen. You know, I know you sent Nikita Zadorov. Not you didn't have Zadorov anymore, but you still had, you know, who am I thinking of? The other defenseman at the time. We had one other defense. Oh, I'm sorry, not we had the same year we drafted Gergensons right before that, or was it the year after? I can't remember. Regardless, there's so much promise around, like all around some of these players. Gergens is, I think, coming off maybe even like that one random all-star year that he had. Just so much promise, and I felt like back then we felt the same about the Sabres at the time when we won the Eichel draft as we currently do right now. And I just hope we're not, you know, going through this vicious circle of, oh, we have these prospects, we have all this young talent, and is the issue, Hurls, you know, a culture of losing and not having the right people making, you know, this goes back to our conversation with Harrington, not having the right people making the decisions for the future of this franchise.
I think they need to add some people. That's for sure. We've talked a lot about the president of hockey operations. We've talked a lot about getting more experienced people in the building, especially when it comes to the coaching staff. Even if Don Granato is going to be the head coach next year, I think he obviously needs an upgraded staff. I think Adams has done a relatively good job as an experienced GM, but that's coming from the place of him being an experienced GM, coming in as more of a stopgap in a really high pressure situation when he did come into it, formerly working at a hockey school. I know he has some NHL experience playing in the NHL forever and having those relationships, but being a general manager is way more than that. Although we have seen some former players succeed as first-time general managers in Chris Jury and even Daniel Briere right now, and Chris and Mike Greer over in San Jose. So you don't necessarily need the experience, but it does help. He has surrounded himself with some good people in the front office. I watched the video of this year's trade deadline today, where they made the deals for Bowen Byram, Kyle Poso, and Eric Johnson. Jason Carmonos worked in a front office for years. He's built a really good analytics department. He's got guys surrounding him that I think are capable of making good decisions. I think you just need some more experience and a winning pedigree in the building. But as Harrington told us, Terry believes it is his team, and he, as the owner, does have the right to make that decision. And it doesn't seem like he is going to hire that guy to be the overarching president of hockey operations. So, yeah, I mean, with this current iteration of the team, they're not far off. They're really not. Like, if you take the best parts of this season and the best parts of last season, which obviously you can't do, but that same team still exists, this is not only a wild card team, they're probably third place in the Atlantic if you have the goal scoring and the finishing from last year combined with the improved defense and the goaltending from this year. So it's kind of what it comes down to. And of course, you got to put it all together. But I do think they have the pieces. And I feel like we're way closer than we've been in a long time.
Yeah, I would like to think so. And I guess like just the cynic in me just wonders, are we just getting ready to set ourselves up for just more heartbreak? And again, we might just finish it. We could probably finish maybe a couple points out of a playoff spot this year, and we're still having these same conversations in the offseason. I know injuries, you know, we dealt with a lot of injuries this year. I've been thoroughly convinced for 80% of this season, Tage Thompson has been hurt. Alex Tuck's been hurt for a lot of this year. Jack Quinn, if he does play tomorrow night, I'm not sure if it's been made official or not. I think Don Granato just said he could play tomorrow. and we'll get to that in a little bit, but like he'll play less than 30 games this season. That's a guy that we expected to take a huge step this year. And I know all of those things contribute to the lack of scoring. But also what concerns me is a lot of the storylines surrounding this team. They're not saluting the fans. Again, going back to what we talked about with Harrington. Just the overall, I get the feeling that this team is just gotten softer. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, but looking into this offseason, is this Kevin Adams' most important offseason thus far since taking over as GM?
Well, last season was, and he kind of blew that. So yeah, obviously, I think if he doesn't do anything, or if he doesn't do enough this offseason, he doesn't have a job if they get off to a rough start next year. So I mean, this is critical. Obviously, he needs to add pieces to the middle six. He needs to add another defenseman, maybe a veteran goaltender. Who knows? Like, he needs to do everything he possibly can to make it so that this team is way more of a contending piece than they've been in recent years. There needs to be way more depth. Obviously, you've seen the injuries. Injuries happen in this sport. Like the Jack Quinn, people are talking about him being injury prone. These are two freak accidents. One was a training session in the offseason, and the other one was a weird, he got caught up on the boards and he hurt the same leg that was unrelated to the first.
It was ugly, but
so like
it wasn't
awkward
anything,
play.
it wasn't anything that you.
I wouldn't say call him injury prone.
Yeah.
It's not like a soft tissue injury. So I wouldn't worry about that. But at the same time, injuries do happen. And that's when you need depth. That's when you need other guys to step up, because every NHL team, especially in the playoffs, deals with injuries, and they don't just flop and they don't have any other options. So of course, I mean, you've got a lot of young guys, but as we've seen recently, a lot of these young guys aren't necessarily ready to take that next step quite yet. We saw it with Peterka this year, which has been really, really encouraging. He's going to have 25, maybe even close to 30 goals, which is an incredible step for a 21, 22-year-old player. Jack Quinn has 12 points in 17 games, so he theoretically could have been on a close to a point per game place. So you're getting development, but you're not getting it at the right times from everybody. And that inherently is a hard thing to do when you have so many young guys. I listened to the Alex Tuck interview on the Elliot Friedman show last week, and he said himself, it still is the youngest team in the league. And it's not an excuse, rather than it is a fact. And as we keep saying it, we have the best prospect pipeline in the league. We have all this draft capital. It still is a very young team. And the easiest way to fix that is to supplement that with proven veteran guys. And it's going to be difficult because, as you said, there is a culture of losing. 13-year playoff drought likely going into this summer. But hopefully there is at least enough sentiment around the league that this is a pretty tight locker room. These guys do get along with each other. And it is a hockey city through and through. I think everybody knows that when this team is good, that the fans are going to be back and supporting in full stride. So, it is the most important offseason. He better do something really tangibly meaningful to supplement this roster with some veteran talent.
We're going to talk about that here in a minute too, about Kevin Adams and, the future of him and Don Granato. To your point though, I don't know, man. I genuinely, I don't think any of us could have anticipated this type of a regression in scoring, right? No way. There's no chance. There would have been some regression, but not to this extent. You have Tage Thompson going from a damn near, was it 47 or 48 goals last season? He might not hit 25.
47. So 94 points.
Yeah. He might not hit 25. You know what I mean? It's very, he might not. Dylan Cousins going from a 30-plus goal scorer to potentially not even a 20-goal scorer. It's you can't account for this deep of regression from this team, and that's why I think this offseason is so much more important, because you have your perimeter guys, you have your goal scorers, but I think it's more glaring now than it ever has been what you do need on this team offensively, and that is bigger, stronger forwards who are going to go to the dirty areas of the ice. Because as much as I love seeing it be guys like Zach Benson and sometimes Dylan Cousins, you don't always want to be those guys. And you hear Boone Jenner's name thrown around a lot. That guy it's a perfect example of a guy you want to see. Not that doesn't be Boone Jenner, but a guy like him. I saw, who was it? That quote tweeted off. It was Joe Marino from the Charging Buffalo. He quote tweeted, "Offer sheet Quentin Byfield." Quentin Byfield is a fucking tank. He obviously has having a breakout season after being number 2 to Alexis Lafreniere. I think he went number 2 after him. But I mean, for me, absolutely, like a guy like that with that type of pedigree. Just, I don't need a guy this offseason that's going to go out there and score me 30 or 40 goals. I need a guy who's go out there who's going to clear the way for your Tage Thompson, for your Dylan Cousins, for your Jack Quinn. It makes it easier for them to play their game, because right now we really don't have a player like that.
Yeah, I mean, Greenway's the closest comparable, I would say, in terms of his pedigree, but at the same time, he's not as much of a skilled guy either. I've seen a lot of people getting upset with the coaching staff forcing Greenway up the lineup. It seems as though with Quinn back that he's going to play with Thompson and Tuck. And while I've been impressed with him this season, I do think that is in a middle 6, bottom 6 role. He's not necessarily a guy that's supposed to be on the first line. He's supposed to be a guy that matches up against the other team's top line, plays those tough minutes, really good on the penalty kill. But it shows your lack of depth, and it shows your lack of skill at the top of the lineup if you have to put Jordan Greenway on the top line. There's also, obviously, you traded Casey Middlestat. Jeff Skinner's not necessarily having the season that he did last season, although I do think he has been pretty good in spurts this year, and I do envision a role for him next year as well, because the one thing he is really good at is sometimes getting to those dirty areas and scoring goals. So yeah, you need bigger guys, you need more physical guys, you need guys with speed that, like you said, are willing to get to the front of the net and get you some dirty goals. They've suffered this year from trying to get too many pretty plays as they did last year. I think they got caught up in the highlights a little bit, especially Tage. And that's with the asterisk that we do think that he is hurt, and he's been playing hurt all year. But he doesn't have quite the same spark that he did last year, especially in front of the net, making guys look dumb with those unbelievable dangles that he had. So yeah, I mean, it's a combination of different things. And I would say you need at least 2 pieces. One, a guy like that, but also another proven 20-goal scorer in the league, hopefully of 4+ seasons, because at the end of the day, you need to score goals to win. And they didn't do that enough this season. And that is going to ultimately be the reason, along with the power play not succeeding up until recently, that they missed the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, it's, I think, a combination of both of those things. And I think that's with not even just in free agency, with a trade or with an offer sheet that's readily attainable for this team, given the assets that they have that no other team has. I saw an article that the Senators should not follow the model of what the Buffalo Sabres did. The Senators do not have even close to the prospect pipeline or the amount of cap space that
Who was that said that too? That I laughed
like
at that. I'm like,
it was a Senators blog or something. But that's the example that, yes, of course, it hasn't succeeded recently for the Sabres in terms of what they've done, but they also have the opportunity to correct it, given how much equity and how many assets they have to dispose. Guys that aren't going to make the team for 2 to 3 more years, more cap space than anybody in the league. So many high-level prospects. So yeah, that's the difference, and Kevin Adams has to utilize that, and I think he will.
Yeah, I hope so. How do you feel? Like, you don't believe in like the unwritten rule on offer sheets, right? Like, this is a business. Like, if you can make your team better,
I think GMs do.
I hate it, man. I absolutely hate it so much. It's like
it would happen more often if there wasn't like an unspoken agreement, if there wasn't an unwritten rule. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but at the same time, I do think that GMs are hesitant to do it. We rarely ever see it. I almost can't even remember the last time there was a legitimate big offer sheet. I mean, obviously we all remember the Thomas Vanek one, but yeah, it doesn't happen often. So I do think GMs have a kind of wink, wink, under the table handshake agreement that this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, as much as I would like to see it, I wouldn't get your hopes up because I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it will make the game so much more exciting too. Could you imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that the Sabres, signed him to sign Quentin Byfield to like a max, something similar to what like Edmonton tried to do with Vanek, which I think he'd be worth every penny, at least 6 million, maybe not 8, but 6 for sure. Six,
Yeah.
six per for 8 years. I'd do that in a heartbeat. How excited would we be as a fan? Just talking about that from a league standpoint, that we're no longer just handcuffing ourselves as teams, to draft and trading just the traditional way. Like we're gonna try and poach a team's roster this way, and maybe suffer the repercussions at some other point. But if it's gonna make your team better now, and again, this is a business. I'm sorry, like you should be worried about your team, not what repercussion might come from another team 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Like worry about the now. If a guy like that might make your team better now, then you do it. And there is no other team that has the ability, has our deep of a prospect pool and has as much draft capital as we do, where you can make that work and not risk the future of your team. Because guess what? If you're worried about losing draft picks, if you're worried about if you're worried about not having a first round pick next year or the following year, guess what? All of these players you have in your prospect pool, they're not all going to play for your team. So maybe you do package them to go get a pick, some type of package to get your picks back. You have that ability to do that because you're just so deep down the middle. And it's no secret that Kevin Adams had plenty of teams calling him on all his prospects at the trade deadline. He said, no, these guys are off the table. But because we're in that situation where we have such a high, a good, plentiful draft, a prospect pool, whether it's in Rochester, still in junior, or overseas, you can afford to make those decisions, Earls.
Yeah, exactly. You have the best prospect pipeline for, gosh, it feels like 10 straight years now. So it's just, it's frustrating, but at the same time, it still is a luxury. And they have another first round pick this year. They probably have second, third, fourth, what have you. And that is
we have
an
2
asset
firsts this year?
No, just one first. What I'm saying though is that like a second, a third, a
So we
fourth.
don't have 2 first, do we?
No, but another first round pick. And depending on what happens in these final 10 games, it could be another pretty good one. So especially that guy, like, gosh, whoever the 18-year-old they draft this season probably has no shot. Although we did say that about Zach Benson this year, and then he made the team. But that also speaks to the fact that Zach Benson,
if they use that draft pick, you better be trading one of these players. You know what I mean? Like you have to.
Well, I think it really does depend on the player, but yeah, it's probably obviously. I think Zach Benson is an anomaly that he made the team being a 13th overall pick. Basically, never happens, and I'm super glad that we made that pick when we did, and he's going to be on this team for the next hopefully 15 years. But yeah, it's a situation where you have an embarrassment of riches, and you need to utilize them for something right now. And I think the Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram trade was a good example of what hopefully we can envision in the future. Actual prospects for proven NHL players that can help this team right now. They mentioned that 3 or 4 times in the video that Bowen Byram changes the course or the direction of this team in terms of providing something different. Adam says, it's been no secret that I was looking for a defenseman. Well, it better be no secret that you're looking for more forward depth, that you're looking for a different type of forward, that you're looking for more scoring, because that obviously, given what's happened this year, that's exactly what this team needs.
What do you want from the rest of the season? Obviously, outside of, a gut shot chance at still making the playoffs. What do you want to see from this team? Do you want to see them win with the current group on the ice? Do you want to see them to start looking to Rochester to see what they have in some of these players? Do you want to see some Devin Levi down the stretch? Do you want to see them finally give Eric Comrie a couple starts? Outside of once every 2 months, what do you want to see from this team from tomorrow night till the end of the season And what are your expectations?
So 10 games left, and obviously 6 points out depending on what happens tonight. I think, especially if Jack Quinn is back starting tomorrow night and you get some semblance of what forward lines you wanted to going into this season, I think you kind of ride it out until you're mathematically eliminated. Of course, Luukkonen's been on an incredible run. He's been one of the best goalies in the league in this calendar year, and largely for the most of the season. So I think you give him every single opportunity to prove that he can do that for most of a season, which I think he's deserved. I really do. And if you give yourself a fighting chance, I think that's worth it for this team. I think the expectations we had last year were partially because of the run they made at the end of last season. And of course you want expectations because that is inherently optimism. That is hope. But hopefully when you add to this offseason, that will be supplemented by what happens at the end of this year. You have a 5-game homestand. We've, of course, discussed many times the relationship between this team and the fan base. Winning 5 games at home coming up here in the next couple of weeks, I think would go a long way towards endearing this team to this fan base once again. I don't think anybody wants them to lose the majority of these games to get a better draft pick. I don't see anybody calling for a tank at this point. So I think we can safely put that off the table and hope that we see a little bit more of the offensive team that we saw last year and that we've seen sparks of in the past month. We saw it in those last 2 home games before the road trip where they absolutely dominated the Red Wings and the Islanders in what were very, very critical games, of course, before they went on that road trip. So, yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see the kid line have the same chemistry they did when Quinn was healthy for that month. I want to see Tage, if he's able to have that little spark that he's had for some points in this season. Obviously, Tuck looks a little bit better, but continuing to develop Bowen Byram with Rasmus Dahlin, some of these younger defensemen. Jacob Bryson's played really well this year randomly, and the Sabres have had a really good record when he's been in the lineup. Of course, they should have went to him sooner rather than playing Eric Johnson so much. But no, I mean, I'm excited for tomorrow night.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's wild to think about, but so those are some of the unexpected things that happen over the course of an NHL season at some point. I'm excited for tomorrow night. Like you get a chance to play a home game, which is still meaningful against one of your rivals. And if you win that game and a few other things go your way, you could theoretically be 4 points out with 9 games to play. So you give it your all until you're done. That's how I approach it as a fan. That's how I've always approached it as an athlete with my teams that I've played on. And then you go from there. If they are mathematically eliminated, yeah, I'd like to see more of Levi. I'd like them to bring Kulik and Rosian up and see what they're made of at the NHL level. But until that happens, I think you ride it out with this group and you try to make another push.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, this is about the least optimistic as I've been all season, with good reason. But yeah, I'm on this side too. Let's ride this till the wheels fall off and hope and pray, right? And if we get to the third last game of the season where, we're done like dinner, then okay, I want to see Rose in the lineup for a game or two. I want to see, unless like pulling them out of Rochester is potentially cause them to not make the playoffs, then no, that I know that I don't want to see those guys called up. But I want to see Peyton Krebs show me something. Show me something. I some of the offensive, the chances have been there, but up until that goal against Calgary, which was a terrible goal from Dustin Wolf, good shot, but it was from outside the faceoff dot. Show me something. Show me that you deserve to have this opportunity. Show me that you were worth what we thought you were in that Eichel trade. Because if you don't show me anything these last 10 games, then you could be the odd man out next season. It's very, very possible. And then I just want to see defensively this team continue to grow. I want to see Bowen Byram and Dahlin solidify themselves in this last run as being next year's top pairing defense pairing. I want to see Owen Power continue to make strides the second half of the season. And to your point about Jacob Bryson, he's a +4 this season. He's 6 points in 26 games. Fight for a spot on this team. Fight for it. Make yourself part of the conversation in the offseason. Or maybe you put yourself in a position where you're trade bait in the offseason. I don't know. We're pretty good. We don't know what the future holds for Henry Jokiharju. Matthias Samuelsson is obviously signed till 2030. You have who am I missing? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, Clifton is here for another year. I mean, there's no guaranteeing he's part of the solution next year. Even though I think he's had a really good second half, I think it's hard to debate that he hasn't. But make yourself part of the conversation. I really want to see you leave it all on the ice every night, and put the Sabres make these decisions hard for Kevin Adams in the offseason. That's what I would like to see. And outside, I mean, the obvious is just to see your goal scorers get back onto some. I would like to see Tage somehow get as close as he can to 30 goals. I'd like to see more. I like to see the kid line continue to coming back together. Maybe we saw semblances of Dylan Cousins of last year, back the last time they played together. I'd like to see him get his game on track here in this most important 10 games of the season. And I don't know, man. I think they said that we're going to have Levi for at least 2 more games, right? I think they say he's going to be here for the last back-to-back.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably send him back to Rochester. So I imagine we'll probably see Levi one more time here this coming week.
Yeah, probably in the back-to-back this weekend. So, as you said, I think they have an opportunity to hopefully go on a similar type run to last year, which, of course, too little, too late. But what else are you going to do? Of course, we don't want the opposite. So I think, especially the defense. And as we've talked about with Luukkonen, it's been really encouraging because that has been the problem for every year up until this year. The goaltending hasn't been good enough for the majority of the year. The defense has been really, really bad in their own zone. The penalty kill has been really bad. But all 3 of those things have improved, which is really encouraging in terms of going into next season, because I think that's something that is sustainable in terms of the personnel that you have. I think UPL, as we've said many, many times, of course, this isn't all that we need to see, but at the same time, 3 or 4 months is a pretty good cross-section of what he potentially could become as an NHL goalie. Of course, you don't want to overwork him given the injury history that he's had, but he's somewhat proven that he could be a workhorse, that he could be the guy to give you 50, 55, 60 starts. So, yeah, I mean, aside from the game against the Oilers, which I do think the team gave up on him in the third period.
Oh, they gave up on him. They mailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And he smashed his stick, and he was frustrated because I think he knew that too. And he knew that 8 goals on his resume, that hurts your goals against. That hurts your save percentage. Any goalie would be pissed about that, especially after he previously went 26 of 27 games giving up 3 goals or less, which is an incredible streak. Crazy. Yeah, incredible. If we had said that we would have gotten that type of streak from him or Levi or anyone at any single point this year and still not make the playoffs, you would have been kicking yourself. So yeah.
If you were to tell me we're going to get that kind of a stretch from any goalie on this team, I would have bet my entire 401k on this team making playoffs.
And not even the playoffs, second or third place in the Atlantic Division. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate, obviously, that they didn't get the entire ship to come together. And sometimes that happens with hockey teams. But as we've said, I really do not think that they're too far off, and they've got 10 games to show it. So I'm excited to see, and I'm slightly encouraged by how they've been playing recently. Obviously, the road trip wasn't great, but getting Quinn back, I think, is huge for the rest of the lineup, as we've seen when he was playing and the games that he hasn't been in terms of what the combinations are. So we shall see.
We have a new commenter here in the peanut gallery, the Soccer Insider.
Is that Ralph Kruger?
It could be. I don't know. I don't know who that's a picture of, but this is the first time listener, first time caller, long time listener situation. I bet. Disappointing season, a lack of physical play, poor coaching, a lack of scoring from your first line, and a horrible power play this season. The best two Sabres this season have been UPL and JJ Paterka by far. Hard to disagree with that. Hard to disagree with that all. And there's a lot of ill confidence in this chat too. And Kevin Adams from Christopher here. I have zero confidence that this offseason will be any different from last season. You have some Lindy Ruff comments here. We should bring back Lindy Ruff. Don Granato does not care about physical play. Listen, I don't think we should hold our breath to think that Lindy Ruff might ever be behind a Sabres bench again. But I don't disagree that there needs to be a bigger physical element up and down this roster. I think everybody would agree with that. Let me see here. 100% soft team. Paul Hamilton has said it many times, and I totally agree. This team is not built correctly. Small, soft perimeter players won't cut it. Again, Sharman soft, man. I have to agree. We've talked about it, a couple times in this episode already. You need size and you need physicality. That's number one and number two on your to-do list this offseason is figure those two things out. And I guess, if you don't, there's no way they run back the same roster, right? There's no way.
You can't.
There's no way.
Yeah, you'd be effectively risking your livelihood as both Don Granato and Kevin Adams if they do.
And when I say run back the same roster, I'm not talking about guys like maybe Savoy or Kulik or Rosen making the jump. I'm talking no internal changes made, no trades, no cuts, nothing. You're bringing back the same top nine. There's just no way.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either. Because as he said many times, it didn't work. It clearly didn't work. And this is not good enough. Their expectations, of course, were the playoffs, and they didn't make it, even with really good goaltending and a relatively good defense. So yeah, I understand the pessimism and the cynicism from people saying they have zero confidence in Adams that'll do anything because he hasn't necessarily shown it yet. But he also has shown that he can make pretty good trades. And he has shown the ability to part ways with players, especially Casey Middlestat, that we're producing for this team to change the direction and the look of the team in general. So of course you need to see it to believe it, but I do think there's going to be a lot of change because there has to be. Otherwise, we will probably see the exact same thing again, and then he won't have a job. So his job and his livelihood is on the line, and I think he's going to do it. I really do.
Yeah. How short is Don Granato's leash next year?
I think if the first month they're a few games under 500, I think that's probably the leash. I think they need to get off to a good start. This team has gotten off to good starts in the past and still hasn't made the playoffs in the past 5 years, obviously. But given how this season went, I think they absolutely need to have a good start. So I'd say about mid-November, maybe late November, early December, if they're not showing anything different, if the scoring or the power play still isn't up to snuff, I would say that's probably the leash.
Yeah, anybody who's kind of hoping and praying that we see a coaching change this offseason, unless they go 0-10 here, there's just no chance of that happening. I think Pagula has been pretty transparent that he's not trying to continuously pay coaches to not coach for him. He's definitely still paying Kruger, that's for sure. And I don't know if he's still coach. It would have been Housley before him, right? It was Housley and Kruger. I don't know if he's still paying Housley, but
Bilesma, Housley, Kruger, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he's still paying Housley, but he probably just, if he's not, it's probably more recent that he is no longer paying that guy. There's zero chance. His extension hasn't even kicked in yet. So, which also, side note, is it kind of crazy that they jumped the gun like that on extending Kevin Adams and Don Granato after 1 year? Well, more so about Granato after 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year of somewhat sustained success. Maybe it was a little premature. I do think that it's sort of revisionist history on a lot of people's part to say that now. When those extensions were announced, I would say it was largely well received. So I think our view of it now is obviously clouded by the fact that they didn't succeed as they wanted to this year. So you can't go back and change how you felt at that point just because of what's happened now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, probably. But at the same time, like he's coached a lot of NHL hockey games. I think he has the 7th most coached games of a coach to not make the playoffs. So, of course, he was a first-time head coach, but it's not for the lack of experience at this point coaching NHL games. You can say much differently about his coaching staff, as we've sung to the high heavens about with Marty Wilford and Matt Ellis, and I just learned a name of another guy. I just learned a name of the other guy in an article I read the other day that I've never even heard of. So, and then of course the practice coach Dan Girardi. Haven't heard much about him recently.
Dude, like we haven't heard anything from Dan Girardi, by the way.
I do think Mike Bales is a really good goalie coach, and I think that he'll probably stay. He'll probably stay on, and I would even argue that he should have a bigger role. Obviously, maybe not, aside from just helping out with the goalies, but goalies have developed and improved with this team. So, yeah, I think you improve the coaching staff in the offseason. Of course, I do think they're going to try to sign free agents. And if you can't sign the free agents that you're able to, that you want to, because guys don't want to come to Buffalo, or you can't pay them enough, or they want too much money, that's when you make trades. That's when you sign an offer sheet. That's when you do things that are without the power of the guy on the other end. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, but I think they're obviously necessary steps moving into next year.
So the return of Jack Quinn possibly tomorrow night. Obviously he's been sorely missed. He was starting to heat up before he got hurt again. Looks like from what I heard from practice today, the kid line is back together. Even though I did like Paterka up on that top line, I understand why they're making this move back. Obviously going back to the kid line, because I think that I think the hope here is it positively affects Dylan Cousins. Because I don't think you really need to worry about JJ Paterka. I think he's been, for the most part, pretty damn consistent all season. But you really want Dylan Cousins to really get his motor going here. And I think maybe adding Jack Quinn back to that mix, gets him back on the score sheet more often here in the final 10 games.
Yeah. I mean, chemistry is a big thing. And I think they truly understand where each other is going to be on the ice. We've seen it almost every single time they've played. They were really good in the beginning, and then they had a little bit of a lull, but that's to be expected because of the inexperience. But when they did play together those 17 games, Quinn was back. You really started to have a feeling that this was a very good line and could be consistent. So, yeah, this could be the type of thing that sets you on a little bit of a run here. I know it's not necessarily preaching to the choir, and I'm one of the more optimistic people of the bunch, but you win one at home and you have a few things fall your way. It's not out of the question. You've got games against the Capitals. You've got games against the Devils. You have important games down the stretch. It's really not impossible. Crazier things have happened in sports. And you have a hot goalie. You have one of the best goalies in the league and a very good defensive unit that's been playing cohesively. So getting one of your top lines back, which allows your other lines to hopefully mesh together a little bit better, could be a big deal. So we'll see where his cardio is at. We'll see where his health is at, but he hasn't been out for that long. So I can't imagine he's going to be too affected, especially already knowing how to come back from an injury this season. So I'm encouraged by it. I'm excited.
Yeah, he was buzzing around at practice today. I saw some footage. Obviously, cleared for all contact. they missed that shot, man. And I hope they just put him right on the top power play unit, to be 100% honest with you. Just add a different look to it. Put him on that opposite side of Tage. He can score from that spot. And he's more dynamic than Olofsson over there, whoever you're going to put over there. So I'm excited to see Jack Quinn, even if he's at 85%. Most people in the chat here seem to think the Sabres should shut him down for the season, not take a chance of him re-injuring himself.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not healthy, yeah. But if he gets cleared by the doctors, I would put him back out there. It's his timeline is right along with what we heard after he injured himself in San Jose. I think it was about 2 months, and it's been just about 2 months since the injury. And it seems like it was a lower leg injury, maybe a fracture, and that would align with that timeline as well. So if he's healthy and the doctors clear him, there's no reason to shut him down, especially when they're not mathematically eliminated. So I don't agree with that. And I think getting as much chemistry out of that line, and as you said, getting Dylan Cousins going, which is a huge deal for his confidence and the future of this team. He needs to prove that he's a second line center, which he hasn't necessarily done this year. So yeah, I think this is massive, and it's really, really good timing. And I think they were probably waiting for it for this 5-game homestand to do it. So I don't think you shut him down. I think you play him if he's healthy, and you go from there.
Yeah, I agree. You need every guy, all hands on deck, right? So, and again, him even at 85%, that kid line become that set. You have a set second line again, right? I know they're going to try Greenway back up on that first line. I'm not sure who Skinner's playing with, but I would assume that if Greenway doesn't work up on the top unit, I know we've saw some good stuff between him and Tuck in this earlier this season. Again, I think Greenway's just the ultimate utility guy. I think that they won't hesitate to maybe go back to Skinner in that spot.
Yeah, and I think your suggestion of putting Quinn on the power play is a pretty good one, especially given his ability to score from outside of the circle. Not a lot of guys, especially Tage this year, have been able to do that. So yeah, I think you try every single combination and you look for a spark, because sometimes at this time of the year, that's all you need.
Yeah. So we're looking 13 years straight in the face right now, right? It's more likely than not going to happen, barring, again, a miracle here in the last stretch 10 of games, the out-of-town scoreboard going your way. Assuming, now I don't like to assume, but assuming that they don't make the playoffs, with all of the high expectations for this team this season and not meeting those expectations, and it is a young team. It is a very young team. Still, as Alex Tuck said in that 32 Thoughts interview, even with some of the older players, you lost Okposo on the roster. Now that brings your average age down immensely. Eric Johnson being gone as well too. Gergensons is the oldest player on the team. Connor Clifton being your oldest blue liner. Does the weight of the drought and obviously not meeting those expectations affect the mindset and the culture of this team? And the culture being something that we were really upbeat about going into this year and even last year, and seeing the way things went. Again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but like the whole not saluting the fans thing and how soft of a mindset that was. And, the amount of times we've questioned this year effort. And like you said before, how they quit on UPL in that Edmonton game. Is this team mature enough to handle not meeting those expectations that we had and mostly everybody had for them in this season? And are they mature enough to grow from that and move on and learn from it and, make the playoffs next season?
I would say this current group, as it's constructed, no, because this current group, for the most part, has been pretty average this year. So there needs to be a clear injection of, as we've discussed, physicality, speed, goal scoring into this lineup. I think this current group is not good enough to make the playoffs over the course of an 82-game season. And going into this year, of course, we were excited by what we saw at the end of last year, but we probably should have known that this was a possibility. We talked a little bit about the regression that was potentially coming offensively this summer, but I don't think that we ever could have expected it to be this bad. But given the fact that they only signed Connor Clifton and Eric Johnson this past offseason, the writing was on the wall. And I think that we might have been slaves to the optimism, to the hope, to the excitement. I flew home for the home opener for the first time in a long time. I think that everybody, of course, just wants them to win, wants them to succeed. And the culture around the team, I think, is directly related to the fans. I think these guys got so sensitive about the Fire Donnie chants and the boos because they are human and they want these fans to like them. They want these fans to go crazy and fill the building every single night. A Tuesday night against San Jose, they want the building to be packed and they want the same atmosphere that they see throughout the league and play so well in on the road. But that is directly correlated with winning and sustained success and the fans having trust in the organization. So if you don't do that first and you don't prove it to the fans that you can do that, it's not going to happen. It's not going to come back. So no, I don't believe this group is mature enough because they haven't proven it. And you need to add people that can inject that life and that maturity into this group for them to eventually get over that hump.
We do have a question from Dylan Baker. Our thoughts on the Middlestat comments. Were there any more comments about his time in Buffalo that we're not aware of, or?
I think that's probably just that interview that about the practices being faster, right? I haven't seen anything else.
Yeah. That to me does the intensity of Colorado's practices and how obviously he says he's not used to it. That is kind of concerning for me when you look at the people behind the bench. Why? And again, like, I don't know. I know there's a difference between East Coast hockey and West Coast hockey in the NHL. There's, there always has been when it comes to physicality and intensity, different styles of play. I think everybody would agree for the most part, or maybe that's an older way of thinking. Maybe there's more parity across the league now than there ever was before, but that does concern me a little bit, Dylan. I think that they have to take a step back and look at everything, right? Like, I think you need a whole new staff. You need a whole new mindset about, kind of going back to you play the way you practice, right? So maybe that's where you start trying to solve the problem with your current roster before you go on the outside of things and bring in, outside players, whoever that might be. And I think that could also help too, bringing in players with a higher degree of pedigree who you can inject into these practices like we have so far with Bo and Byram, who you see it right away, his ability on the ice, and you kind of hope that it's the same in practice. I just hate these bad habits that we see on the ice. And you have to imagine a lot of that kind of stuff starts in practice. You as a goalie, that. I as a goalie know that we've grown up playing hockey. We've grown up playing team sports. It's true. You play the way you practice. And that's another thing too. I think they really got to take a look at in terms of how they're addressing things away from the game itself, on the ice, in the room, in the gym. Just reevaluate everything.
Yeah, and as you said, that I think that is a direct reflection of the coaching staff. I don't think Don Granato is a bad coach. I really don't. I think he is a pretty good coach, and especially compared to what we've had recently. So I do think though that he needs more experience. He needs bigger voices on his bench, not necessarily as many yes men or just friends of the program as I think he's had recently. He needs guys with NHL experience from different backgrounds with different ideas to come in here and inject new life into the organization. So yeah, I mean, intensity in practice, yeah, it does matter. I think that also comes down to physicality and speed and your conditioning and your ability to win late in games. Weirdly, they've been really bad in the first period this year, but really good in the third. I don't know if that's a direct reflection of practice or them just waking up too late in games, not getting off to good starts. But yeah, I think it all factors in. And I don't think Middlestat was wrong to say what he did. I think he was asked the question and he just responded. And I don't look at that with any hate whatsoever. I think he's in a new situation and it's going to be really good for him. But yeah, I mean, it is a reflection of what the culture of this team is right now and the direction moving forward. And I do think that's kind of easily fixable, right? Like these guys are pro hockey players. They've been through the best levels of hockey throughout the world. As young as they are, they've all played in better leagues than any of us could ever imagine, especially us being hockey players and current beer league players. So yeah, I think these guys know how to do it. They're in incredible shape. They have the motivation, and added to the fact that, yeah, this is likely going to be 13 going on 14 years. So there is pressure, and sometimes pressure creates diamonds. And I think the intensity could be part of that for sure.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Aside from what we've said, I'm kind of approaching these final 10 games how we did last year. Of course, there was that Levi component of those final 10 games last year that is a little bit different than what we have right now. But I think the UPL component is pretty similar given how encouraging his play has been this year. And I think you can latch onto that as a team, and also the return of Jack Quinn, and try to catch something here, bottle up whatever momentum you can find until you're eliminated, because it's probably going to happen at some point unless they win all 10 games. So I really, really do believe tomorrow is a big step towards that at home, coming off a somewhat disappointing road trip, but you had really, really good games before that in playoff type situations. So I think you hopefully handle business tomorrow night against the Senators, and then you go from there. You have 4 more games at home, some pretty good teams coming in, but you treat it like the playoffs and you see what you can do. And if not, then we're in the same place where we were, as both as fans and the organization. You sit down, you figure out what went wrong, and you try to correct it. And obviously don't make the same mistakes you did last offseason.
Yeah. I'm going to loop my final thoughts in here with this comment here from Big Fungus. What are we even talking about here? We had Pekka in our front office and our front office refused to give him a bench position over Matt fucking Ellis or Christie. This team is cooked. That for me, and we've talked about it a few times so far in this episode, that's where you got to start taking a different approach personally. If you are going to move forward with Donnie next season, you have to put winning pedigree around him. I don't even care if you have to find some retread NHL coach who just wants to be an assistant. Find coaches who have experienced NHL playoff hockey. Not talk about as players, as coaches. As a player, yes, that'd be preferred. But surround Donnie with experience. You don't have to pay assistant coaches a lot of money. You just don't. If you're going to give this team the best chance to succeed next season, that's where it has to start. You can't let another situation where let a guy like Mike Pekka go, walk out of your organization, who has been behind a bench in some form of capacity for quite over a decade now at the junior and AHL level. That's where I think you have to start, away from the roster, is that right there. Get different mindsets around Donnie. And whether it's him picking his staff, I mean, Matt Ellis just should not be on this bench next year. Christie should not be on this bench. Marty Wolford should not be on this bench next year. Get us some experience on that bench. Set him up to succeed like you should have from day one as a rookie NHL coach. That's how you want to, freeze it. Because if you're not going to fire him, if you're going to retain, bring him back to start this extension of his, and if you don't want to find yourself in another situation where you're hiring a new coach and still paying an old coach, that's where I think you need to begin. And I couldn't agree with Big Fungus here more. You can't let another situation, a Michael Pekka situation, happen. Whether that's Seth Appert, whether you're bringing up Seth Appert to be an assistant next year, I don't know, but you cannot run back the same staff anymore. Dan Girardi, sorry, bud, you had a great storied NHL career, undrafted. You had that Iron Man streak, I believe. You were a hard-nosed defenseman, fantastic. But if you're not here for the long haul, and if you're not going to commit to being a part of this team full time, then see you, bud. That's my final thoughts, Charles.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page from both a coaching and player perspective. And yeah, I hope they do it. And if not, well, I think we'll be a little bit less excited going into next year. That's for sure. And I think the team and the organization will definitely hear that from the fans because they've heard it from us for a long time now, deservedly so. And if they just go in and try to just run this back, gosh, that's not going to be pretty. So I don't think they will. I'm going to choose to be optimistic about those two hopeful developments. And then, we'll go from there, see what happens.
Agreed. So just remember, everybody, this is brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room. Fatty Beer has 8 different Western New York locations and over 300 beers to choose from. Open 7 days a week from 11:30 a.m. till 10:30 p.m. and later with live music, entertainment, and trivia at all 8 locations. And, of course, they are one of Western New York's only kid and dog-friendly bars. God damn it. I love getting that right without messing up. That was good. And then, of course, Buffalo Logo Apparel, one of the great spots to get all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs, from your shirts, your hats, your hoodies. Make sure you go check out their Zubaz golf polos, now available again at Buffalo Logo Co. BuffaloLogo.com, Buffalo Co. on Instagram and Twitter. Their Masters t-shirts and hats, Buffalo Masters t-shirts and hats, and of course our merchandise all available. The #GOATed snapback, the RJ snapback, or of course the #GOAT shirt. And please keep an eye out for our merchandise as well, which will hopefully be up soon. So that being said, I am Duane for Hurls. This has been episode 152, 2 goalies, 1 mic. As always, go Sabres, and let's see what happens here in the next 10 games, Hurls. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a fantastic week. See you then.